The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We had a great trip to Japan, and it was really wonderful. Malaysia, fantastic. Hundreds of millions of dollars are coming into our country.
South Korea trade deal done. The president now preparing for what many say is the most important part of his agenda in Asia, meeting with Xi Jinping. And the verdict is in. A former Illinois sheriff's deputy accused of murder in the shooting death of a woman who called 911 for help. Plus, social media censorship. Big tech companies grilled on Capitol Hill about whether or not they conspired to quiet Americans' voices during the previous administration. Good evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. In just a few hours, President Donald Trump will be sitting down for an hours-long meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea. They're meeting tonight in South Korea amid heightened tensions over trade. Now, both sides have a lot to gain by striking a deal. National correspondent Matt Gelka reports from Washington with more on what's on the line for both countries.
The meeting between President Donald Trump and China's President Xi Jinping is another chapter in the long-running partnership and growing rivalry between the two countries. China's influence on the world has long been seen as a threat to American power, but Trump has maintained that he and Xi have great mutual respect for each other that dates back to his first term.
He's strong, he's tough, but he's good. We have a very good relationship.
I have a good relationship with, as you know, President Xi, very good.
Despite the strong ties, China and the U.S. spent a better part of this year going back and forth on escalating tariffs in a trade war that has the potential to pop off again if negotiations break down. Tariffs are just the starting point. Tensions over TikTok and technology, stopping the flow of Chinese-made fentanyl into the U.S., and China's ties to other United States adversaries have all led to an international feud.
Both countries are competitors, and that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future.
Retired Ambassador Gordon Gray now teaches at George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs. He says both countries have leverage on different issues, and it would be better for both and the world to lower the temperature.
Both countries need one another economically. We need China as a market. They need us for a market. We need access to their rare earth minerals, which they have a virtual chokehold on.
Taiwan and the island's independence has been a long-running issue between the U.S. and China, where there's been a constant threat of China using its military to reclaim the island as its own, and questions of whether or not the U.S. would step in to defend Taiwan if fighting broke out. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The United States and South Korea have now hashed out details of a major trade agreement. President Trump met with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung at an APEC dinner.
We pretty much finalized a trade deal, and we discussed some other things having to do with national security, etc. And I think we came to a conclusion on a lot of very important items.
A South Korean official says the deal includes a $350 billion investment package and a $200 billion investment in the U.S. from South Korea, capped at $20 billion annually. Now, the rest of the money will go towards a shipbuilding partnership. Mutual tariffs are staying at 15%, and automobile tariffs on South Korea will drop to the same rate. Hurricane Melissa is now affecting parts of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, with heavy rain and dangerous storm surge expected tonight. This comes as Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica are recovering from Melissa's widespread destruction. Now, it made landfall in Jamaica yesterday as an extremely powerful Category 5 hurricane, bringing flash flooding and landslides to the islands. Dozens of deaths and severe infrastructure damage were reported. Jamaica's Energy and Transportation Minister says the hurricane caused total devastation.
My biggest concerns would be, and that's on behalf of the government, would be the welfare of the people that have been struck by this devastating hurricane. Their safety and security is number one. And then secondly, trying to see how quickly we can restore infrastructure.
Melissa is now eyeing Bermuda, where hurricane conditions and heavy rain are forecast late tomorrow. The Federal Reserve cutting interest rates by another quarter percentage point today. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says even though the inflation rate hasn't fallen to where they want it, they still went with a cut because of how much the job market is slowing down. The National News Desk, Atra El-Nashar, has more from Washington.
The Federal Reserve continues to chip away at interest rates.
The Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a quarter percentage point.
The Fed's rate cuts are driving down mortgage rates at a time when the housing market is out of reach for so many. The average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell to 6.19% last week, according to Freddie Mac. Demand for refinancing is more than double what it was during the same week last year. The reason rates are falling is less rosy. Central bankers are nervous about the job market.
We're watching that very carefully.
Just this week, we learned Target is cutting 1,800 corporate jobs, their first major layoffs in a decade. Paramount Skydance, under new leadership after a merger, starting to lay off what's expected to be about 2,000 employees, 10% of its workforce. UPS slashing an additional 14,000 jobs, bringing its total job cuts for the year up to 48,000. Amazon also announcing 14,000 roles will be cut. It's part of the company's integration of artificial intelligence, which CEO Andy Jassy previewed this summer.
Yes, like with every technical transformation, there will be fewer people doing some of the jobs that the technology actually starts to automate.
Even before these layoffs, there were clear signs the job market was losing steam. The private sector shed 32,000 jobs in September, according to ADP. Because of the government shutdown, that's one of the few data points the Fed has. The Bureau of Labor Statistics couldn't release a jobs report this month, so the most recent data we have is from August, released in September, showing the unemployment rate was 4.3%.
They're going to have a gaping donut hole that is October at a minimum, could be October and November. It's been close to 6 decades since the BLS has not produced a monthly labor report.
6 decades. That's a long time to break precedent. Now, Powell says the lack of government data means that they won't obviously have a detailed picture of the economy, but he says if there was a dramatic shift in conditions, they would still be able to tell. Now, Powell also cautioned that another rate cut at their December meeting is not a foregone conclusion.
And what more did Powell say about what's causing a cooling in the labor market?
Well, Powell and economists are really pointing to a decline in labor supply, fewer workers, and that's contributing to a sharp slowdown in hiring, which in turn hinders overall economic growth. So what's causing this labor supply to shrink? Well, there's anemic labor force participation and more recently, a massive decline in immigration, both legal and illegal. In fact, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office recently downgraded its GDP forecast for the year from about 2% to just 1.4%, and it cites the president's immigration crackdown as a main factor.
In Washington, D.C., Atra El-Nashar, thank you. Right now, a manhunt for an inmate who was accidentally let out of a California jail continues. Officials say 20-year-old Isaiah Andrews of Kent, Washington, was released from the Martinez detention facility. This was last Wednesday. Andrews was being held on charges related to a police chase and was wanted on an arrest warrant for homicide. Anyone with information should call 911. Well, a former Illinois sheriff's deputy has been convicted of murdering Sonia Massey, a black woman who called 911 for help. A jury found Sean Grayson guilty today in the 2024 shooting at Massey's home. Body camera video you're seeing here shows Massey, who had a history of mental health issues, saying, "Don't hurt me." Grayson claimed he feared Massey would throw boiling water on him. He's facing up to 20 years in prison or probation. U.S. Border Patrol official Greg Bovino does not have to meet with a judge daily to discuss the Chicago area immigration crackdown. This is because a federal appeals court stepped in today after that judge ordered the daily meetings just yesterday. Now, the order stemmed from a lawsuit claiming agents have used too much force, pointing to certain videos and images that government lawyers have argued are one-sided. The Trump-appointed acting U.S. attorney in Los Angeles is disqualified from supervising criminal prosecutions in several cases. A federal judge ruled Bill Esseleg, is unlawfully serving in the role and stayed for too long. Now, he was appointed on an interim basis, then later named acting U.S. attorney, which usually requires Senate approval. Now, he argues the order doesn't change anything. He's allowed to stay on as a first assistant. In other news now, the two federal prosecutors are being put on leave after describing the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack as involving a mob of rioters. Carlos Valdivia and Samuel White were suspended after submitting a sentencing request yesterday for Taylor Taranto. Now, Taranto was pardoned by President Trump for January 6 related charges, but still has charges related to an arrest near President Obama's home. Two suspects in that Louvre jewel heist have partially admitted their participation. This is according to a Paris prosecutor who believes these are the men who forced their way into the world's most visited museum earlier this month. The two suspects now face preliminary charges of theft committed by an organized gang and criminal conspiracy and are expected to be held in provisional detention. One suspect is a 34-year-old Algerian national who's been living in France since 2010. He was arrested Saturday night at Charles de Gaulle Airport. He was about to fly back to Algeria with no return ticket. Now, the other suspect, 39 years old, was arrested Saturday night at his home in a northern suburb of Paris. According to investigators, the man was known to police for several thefts, and his DNA was found, they say, on one of the glass jewelry cases at the Louvre. And of course, you may remember it took thieves less than 8 minutes to steal jewels valued at $102 million, and the jewels are still missing. Coming up, no scheduled vote today to reopen the government, when lawmakers are expected back, and what some on Capitol Hill are saying about the divide between parties. Plus, it's the United States versus cartels, drug boat strikes ramping up. More on the latest strikes that the Trump administration is defending as necessary to combat narco-terrorism. Plus, one company cracking down on short-term rentals during spooky season, what you may need to know and the rules you may need to look at before booking a home for a Halloween party. The federal government shutdown is in its 29th day today, and the U.S. Senate is not scheduled to vote on the funding until at least Thursday. But Majority Leader John Thune did tell reporters discussions have increased on a pathway forward, but for now, the same divide between the parties and the chambers is keeping that stalemate going.
House Republicans are being paid and not working, and federal workers are working and not being paid. It's a disgrace. But we're here. We're ready. Hakeem Jeffries and I are willing to sit down and negotiate.
If I brought the House back and we passed another CR, it would meet the exact same fate of Chuck Schumer. He would mock it, they would spike it, and they would try to blame it on us. Look, I think Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are irredeemable at this point. I don't think they'll be able to tell Mondami in New York and his disciples that they voted to open the government.
And at the end of this week, SNAP benefits end across the country as the program will run out of money. The Senate is considering a standalone bill that would refund the food program. Roughly 40 million Americans are served by SNAP, which provides federal food assistance for low-income families. The federal government spent $100 billion on SNAP in fiscal year 2024, about 1.5% of all federal funding. SNAP benefits have risen substantially since the turn of the century. military. In 2000, inflation-adjusted SNAP spending was just $28 billion. The program saw gradual increases under the Bush administration before a significant increase during the Great Recession in the early Obama years. And spending did decline from 2015 to 2019 before a sharp jump during COVID. Executives from Meta and Google were brought back to Capitol Hill today to answer more questions about pressure they received from the Biden administration to censor Americans who expressed views that differed from the White House, now especially during the pandemic. The National News Desk, Kayla Gaskins, has the story.
Top representatives from Google and Meta on Capitol Hill Wednesday for yet another hearing examining government pressure from the previous administration to curb Americans' free speech on their platforms.
Big tech was speechless when the Biden White House bullied them into censoring regular citizens.
Both tech giants have already acknowledged the Biden administration put immense pressure on them to quiet dissenting voices.
We do regret our actions for not speaking out more forcefully against the Biden administration.
Particularly when it came to COVID-19 information on best practices and vaccines, also on allegations of voter fraud.
Why would you remove a journalistic record of the claims of election frauds from both Democrats and Republicans?
During the hearing, both companies maintained that the decisions they made to quiet what critics point out were mainly conservative voices during that time were made entirely of their free will.
Ultimately, it was our decision to take down content.
We develop and enforce our policies independently.
So it was your decision to ban Dan Bongino on YouTube. It was your decision to ban RFK Jr. on YouTube. Yes or no, please?
Senator, I'm not familiar with those specific
You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's now the NIH director, you banned content from him because he said masks were ineffective for kids. You were banning the hell out of conservatives left and right in that time period.
Democratic Senator Ben Ray Lujan asking Google about a settlement the company reached with President Trump after YouTube suspended Trump's account following the January 6th riot at the Capitol.
Did YouTube pay $24.5 million to settle President Trump's lawsuit against the company, the majority of which goes toward President Trump's ballroom?
Yes.
Senator Ted Cruz says he plans to introduce new legislation he calls the Jawbone Act to address this type of government pressure and further protect Americans' right to free speech. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Israel's military says the ceasefire remains in place despite back-to-back days of airstrikes in Gaza. Today, Israel struck what they called a weapons storage facility in the northern part of the Strip. And yesterday, Israel retaliated against Hamas in the southern city of Rafah after an IDF soldier was killed. President Trump says he supports Israel's actions.
Well, as I understand it, they took out an Israeli soldier. I just heard about it a little while ago. They killed an Israeli soldier, so the Israelis hit back, and they should hit back. When that happens, they should hit back.
Hamas officials say at least 2 people died in today's airstrike, while yesterday Hamas health officials say more than 100 people were killed. The largest gang bust in Brazil history has left more than 130 dead, including at least 4 police officers in Rio de Janeiro. Cautions some of the images coming out of Brazil could be disturbing. Rio police conducted a military-style ambush of a known drug cartel with an ambush that was planned for more than 2 months. At least 113 people were also arrested. Rio Governor Claudio Castro says he believes the people killed were narco-terrorists and civilians would not have been in that area at the time of the raid. Meanwhile, the United States' effort to combat narco-terrorism continues to ramp up. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing yesterday the U.S. military killed 14 alleged narco-terrorists in a series of strikes against 4 suspected drug vessels. This was in the Eastern Pacific. Now, the strikes come as the U.S. intensifies action against Venezuela, claiming the country is involved in drug trafficking. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris reports.
Officials say dozens of suspected drug traffickers have been killed since September when the Trump administration began targeting boats linked to Venezuela, allegedly carrying drugs. This latest strike on Monday killing 14 with 1 survivor. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing on X Tuesday the U.S. military killed 14 alleged narco-terrorists in a series of strikes against 4 suspected drug vessels in the Eastern Pacific. These narco-terrorists have killed more Americans than al-Qaeda, and they will be treated the same. We will track them, we will network them, and then we will hunt and kill them. Since September, the U.S. has carried out at least 13 strikes against alleged drug vessels, mostly in the Caribbean, killing dozens. The strikes coming amid growing tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. The U.S. accusing the country's government of being involved in drug trafficking, and its president, Nicolas Maduro, of controlling Tren de Aragua.
Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people.
Meanwhile, Venezuela views the strikes as a threat to its sovereignty. Maduro also alleging Trump is seeking a regime change through military action. The country's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, claiming this week it captured a mercenary group linked to the CIA plotting a false flag attack. A false flag attack is underway in waters bordering Trinidad and Tobago or from Trinidadian or Venezuelan territory to generate a full military confrontation with our country. Rodriguez didn't share any evidence or go into more detail, but President Trump did confirm earlier this month he's authorized the CIA to carry out covert operations in Venezuela for 2 reasons.
They have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela, and a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that.
Now, multiple U.S. officials involved in the Latin America operations also telling Reuters they've been asked to sign non-disclosure agreements, a development now raising some questions about a military buildup in that area. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Uber plans to hop on the self-driving car craze and will roll out autonomous taxi rides next year. The company says the San Francisco Bay Area will be the first market for the robo-taxi, with an expected launch in late 2026. Uber partnered with electric car company Lucid and self-driving tech company Nuro to design the model exclusive to Uber. And within 6 years, Uber says it plans to deploy 20,000 or more of these autonomous taxis in multiple locations, and the vehicles will be available to riders through the Uber app. Coming up, several people swept away by dangerous floodwater in Austin, Texas. Why city leaders say the homeless population is most at risk and what's being done about it. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Texas, where concern is growing after multiple people drowned in a drainage pipe.
This is one of the most dangerous drainage culverts in Austin. 3 people living on the banks of Hancock Creek have been caught in rising water and drowned.
3 people in about 4 months, as far as I can tell. And just in District 7.
Austin City Council member Mike Siegel says one person drowned during a summer microburst flood when the water rose about 7 feet in this creek off Burnett Road. 2 more people living on the edge of the creek were swept away early Saturday morning by fast-moving floodwaters. 3 days later, more people experiencing homelessness are staking out spots that could put their lives in danger.
If we displace people from a relatively safe site and they're forced to look for another site, these culverts are attractive places because they can be out of view.
Austin only has a shelter bed for 1 out of every 5 people living on the streets. The rest have nowhere safe to go during extreme weather.
How can we slow the passage of water from upstream in Austin as it goes down to the river? There's capital improvement projects that would detain water and make sure it flows more slowly, and it would be less likely to flood and catch people unaware.
Airbnb implementing technology to help hosts keep wannabe party throwers away. The company saying their anti-party system is in effect for Halloween weekend. The system uses AI to look for signs of potential party risks, such as the length of the stay, distance of the listing from the guest location, and timing of the booking, blocking high-risk booking attempts.
This was a helpful tool. Property owners also take matters into their own hand. They have security cameras that they use. And like I said, they're very clear with the rules.
It's technology that the Greatest Las Vegas Short-Term Rental Association says is welcome, saying most property owners have security cameras to monitor activity as well. Founder Jacqueline Flores says the owners, just like the neighbors, don't want people throwing parties either.
We've had issues in the past is that Metro doesn't want to get involved. And so, the property owners then is left holding the bag.
Year has been revealed, and it's more of a number. Kind of. Dictionary.com has crowned 6'7", never to be pronounced 67, as it actually appears. 6'7's origin is not entirely clear, and that's part of its allure. The dictionary states some say it can be interpreted as another way of saying so-so, maybe this or maybe that. Other terms that made the short list included aura farming, tariff, and tradwife. Well, that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. Join us again tonight as Vice President J.D. Vance and Erica Kirk take questions at a Turning Point USA event at the University of Mississippi. We'll have the latest on that. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.